Hi, you are looking at the Kato 20605 N-gauge signal. Built for DC. Kato unfortunately don't make one for DCC, but I'm going to show you how you can. By converting the DC signal to a DCC with just a matter of a bit of soldering, a few wires, and then you can manually use the signal from a toggle switch on your control board. In this video I will tell you how it's done, show you how it's done with photos and video, with the tools that you need, and with a bit of care. In about half an hour you should have a converted signal. First of all, you will need a power pack for the signal supply. Next, you will need the signal control box, which controls up to 3 signals. A toggle switch. These are the type I use. Got 3 poles at the back, so it means it has 3 settings. The on, the off it's in the middle, and the on down the bottom selection. I recommend these because these are the ones I use and the signal works fine with these. So you'll only be using 2 connections at the back. The next thing you're going to need is a soldering iron and some solder. Now I use this little battery powered soldering iron, 4.5 volts, 8 watts. The reason why I use this is easier. You haven't got a cable tagging along at the back. I've got a butane, but I feel that this is a lot better because it doesn't get too hot, it's more controllable. It's not too hot for the tracks, so you've got no chance of burning tracks out hopefully with this. They're not expensive, about 14 quid from Maplin's. Also, you're going to need some wire. Now, if you're going to use the same colour, that's fine. I did on my first one. The only thing is, you must remember the wires. So what I did with mine, I put the toggle switch on first on the end of the wires that needed to be connected, so I could ID them and not put the DC wires on the wrong connectors. Anyway, I'll explain that throughout the video, but my second one that I did from then on, I used black, red and green. So it is available. If it is available to you, then I recommend you do that. Another thing I'd like to point out is use thin gauge wire. The reason is because once you've finished, you'll want those wires to come through the space that's moulded in the plastic where the original wires went. So you don't want them coming underneath the board. It won't lay flat otherwise. So thin gauge wire. Model shop provides that. Now here is a test of one of the signals I've recently finished, which has now become DCC with a manual control signal by a toggle switch. The rail will now be dead, so it's only the signal that's being powered by 12 volts, which is obviously powered by the Kato power pack. So I will show you. If I switch it on, as you can see, it will slowly change to green. And then when you switch it off, it goes back to red. I'll show you that once more. Turn it on. And as you can see, the speed it goes is very realistic. So this is what you can have. and off in the space of about half an hour, and they just remain red all the time until you change them. Okay, this is a test in the dark. I'll switch it on. There you go, changes to green. Of course, you can leave it on green. You don't have to change it back to red, but you can stay on green, obviously, and switch it off, it goes back to red. So I'll do that once more, back up to green. I'm just changing them backwards and forwards to show you what the finished product looks like, really. Anyway, that's the test in the dark. Right, before we begin, there's one thing that I need to say, very important, before you start taking the board off the base of the rail on the signal. As you can see, I've already converted this one, but I need to point this out because this is how I ruined my first signal, and it can be easily be ruined if you're not careful. Now, these 3 screws are the only ones you need to unscrew from the base. Now, I'll explain this further into the video probably, but I want to stress this because if you undo that screw, you're going to be in trouble. That screw holds on the signal, but underneath there's 4 hairlight wires. There's a red, green, yellow and violet, and once they come off the soldering points, you'll probably have a job getting them back on. They are so minute and thin. Mine unfortunately came off because of the weight of the signal hanging down, kept turning and making the joints weak, and one came off and then another, and I thought I'd be able to get them back on, solder them, but I did give it a go, and in the end I just said, right, that's it. I put it on in a box. I might have a go at another time. Unfortunately, one of the wires, the violet wire, became shorter and shorter, kept breaking. So whatever you do, do not undo that screw. It is totally unnecessary for what you're going to be doing. All you need to concentrate on are the 3 center screws, and that's all you need to do. Now, I find the best way to do this is with a vise. Just put the signal in the vise carefully. Don't squeeze it too tight, obviously, because you might break it. But I just find it's easier to work with this way. Now, as I said to you earlier on, the 3 center screws only. Whatever you do, don't take this screw out. It's not needed. It's unnecessary. So basically, these 3. They're very tiny. Take care you don't lose any of them, because obviously you want them to put the plate back on at the end. And then gently just lift the plate out. Well, plate, all you have to do now is basically take it off, the plate off, like that. So now we have this. As you can see, as you take it off, there's a black wire that's attached. That's the original black wire for the switch. So you will be disconnecting that and doing away with it, because that won't be needed anymore. That's what it looks like inside. Some people might think, oh my God, you know, this looks a bit technical. Maybe I won't do this after all, but believe me, it's very, very easy. Very easy. Now, when you take this apart, you will find these clips. There's two of them. They'll probably fall out, which one of mine has actually. There they are, there's two of them. But don't worry about them because you won't be using them anymore either. So you can discard those. They're no use to you. Now, the first thing we're going to do, I think is pretty obvious, is we're going to take this wire off. You've got to cut it off. Just want you to cut it off as close to the switch as possible. So now this can come away at the moment. You don't need this at the moment. Now with the board, like so, disregard that wire at the moment. That'll be coming off soon. Now you place this back in the vise carefully, but you don't break anything screwing it when you're screwing it up, tightening it up. You don't want to break anything. It's just to hold it firmly. Now there are 3 soldering points, and I think you can see them on the camera here. The first one's here, it's just behind the light here. The second one is here, and the third one where that black wire is, which you've now deleted from your rail basically by cutting that off. And as you know, these are the 2 wires that go to your blue signal box, which will remain, obviously. This terminal here is the plus. You will have 2 wires soldered on there. You'll have one soldered to that one there, which is the negative, and then you'll have 1 wire soldered to this one, which is basically acts as a timer. So you will have 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 wires coming out. The DC supply here, plus the DC negative here. You also have another wire with this DC plus, which will go to the control switch, your toggle switch. And your negative will also go to the power negative. This one here will go to your switch, this wire here. And these 2 will be powered up. So your plus and a minus for powering up the light, 12 volt separately, and this one here to go to the switch as well. So you'll have this plus and this one here to go to the switch. So you will have 4. So now, because it's plus, I'm using this time a red wire. So I'll have 2 red wires come on here, soldered on here. I have the DC power supply and a switch supply. This here, these 2 here terminals are the ones that actually power the switch, the signal, with 12 volts. By taking that one off there, you've now separated the switch and the live rail from the 12 volt supply. So now when you put everything back, your rail will be dead unless you put it onto your DCC supply. So 2 reds, 1 black, and whatever colour you want to go there. Actually, I might put a different colour on there this time. I might put a green one on there to show that that one goes to the switch. Right, okay then, that's my first 2 wires soldered to the first plus terminal. Now, I recommend that when you solder them on, that you solder them on sideways really, because the way the shape of the rectangular solder there in the beginning, instead of going straight on, because it might be a little bit awkward and you don't want it crossing any other tracks. So what I do is put them on sideways, and then I can bend the wire around, because what you've got to remember is, you know, once it's on, once the wire's on, once the plate's back on the bottom, you're not going to be twisting and turning those wires. They're going to be in one position all the time. So they should stay and remain exactly where they are. I found it easier to twist the wires together, get some solder, layer the wires with solder first, then go down to the terminal and solder it onto the terminal, and usually it will stay. So as long as you can pull it and it doesn't come off, it's fine. That's all you need to do. Now the next thing I'm going to do, I could do that now actually. I'm just going to remove this little wire from here. These soldering irons that I'm using, the ones that I said you get from Maplin's, they heat up pretty quickly actually. But you just want, instead of cutting this off, I want to take it off with the solder, because I want to get all the, as it's coming out now, there we are. That way you're getting all the wire out, you're not leaving anything in there. Gives you a much better space to work with. Okay, the next thing, I'm going to put a black wire on here, which is a negative wire, on this terminal here. So that's my next job. Now I already have my green wire ready, and this is the one that's now going to be soldered onto the switch here, the switch terminal, what was originally the switch. I think that gives you the time delay as well as when the lights go over from the different colours, from green to red and whatever. So that's now going to be attached to there, and when that's done, that's it. You have then converted your switch. So all it's down to then is testing. So I'll solder that on there now. Okay, my green switch light cable is on. You've got to be very careful because you're around, you know, all these components and whatever. This one is not so easy as doing the others, so be very careful here. This is why you really do need a soldering iron that's not too hot. You are around tracks here and around these components here, but it certainly isn't the easiest one of the three. It's the hardest one. That's now complete. You have 3, 4, you have 6 wires, and all these wires, and they're going to come out this way when the rail is back on. And as you can see, they're not too bad. They should go through all the space that's needed, that's moulded in the plastic to come out the other on the side of the track. You don't need to tape them. If you tape them, you've got to put tape around them. That'll make it even more awkward to put the plate back on. You don't need to. They're perfectly all right. And of course, what you've got to remember is when the plate's back on, they're going to be held in place tightly. So there's nothing in there that's going to come away. If you solder them up properly, they'll be fine. Okay. Right, okay then. Now we have the completed signal with all the wires attached. Before you put it together, before you put it back on the layout to try, I would suggest to try it now. So get all your things together, connect it all up, because if there is any problems, it saves you taking it all apart again. And if there's problems, it could be anything to do with your soldering, or you might have soldered in the wrong place. I hope you haven't. I hope this video has been pretty clear. Right, so I'll get everything together and we'll try it out. Right, now, I know it's a little bit of a mess here, but anyway, I've got it all wired up. And now we're going to put it through its first test. Okay then, right, at the moment it's on red, switched off. Switch it on. There we go, amber, green. Switch it off. There you go. It works. One more time. Amber, green, yeah, and then switch it off. There we go. So anyway, there you are. A conversion. So it's possible, it can be done, as you can see, all ready to put back together and put on your layout. I hope this helped. So good luck with it, and hopefully you won't ruin any signals. But it's a great idea, it does work, which means now you can have your Kato signals on a DCC layout.